It's just I hadn't started the streaming. This is Patricia and David, and we again have a warm morning. Boy, 3 days in a row we wake up to 16 degrees. It's not very pleasant though. 3 knots of northeast with 100% cloud cover. 1018.3 on the bar. We had a miserable day yesterday because it just, as soon as I got my laundry on the line, I might add, at lunchtime the rain came and it pretty much rained on and off all afternoon. But believe it or not, we could do with a bit of rain because it hadn't rained for 3 days, and for us that was quite unusual. Anyway, it's a grey day today, and I see we've got Cables Link as import, so that's great. They've arrived in Marsden Cove, and then the rain started for them. It's still up north and going across the top of us actually, so they're pretty happy, I'm sure. And Haven are making good progress. Let me get some space here. Haven have got only 140 miles to go. I think they're going into Brisbane now, and they've got 10 to 15 from the southeast. So pretty calm up there. I guess there in Catherine Bay they've moved around. It's calm up there in Fiji, and Tregoning, they're still down in Anisham, southeast about 11, so not too bad there. I'll just see if oh, by the way, Quintessa is on their way from the Marquesas. I was just looking for Obsession, nothing in yet from them. So yeah, it sounds pretty good. Better weather than what we've got here without greyness. I'll just pause to see if anyone's got a position report. Nothing heard. There's not a great deal of news this morning. You know, normally about now there's been some exciting news from President Trump, but it's been quite quiet over there. He's trying to get another judge elected, but he's having a bit of strife with that. But the main interest, for me anyway, was quite a lengthy article in the paper yesterday about flu pandemics. And the reason that this was there is that it's the 100th anniversary of the Spanish flu in 1918. And I always thought that it started in Spain, but it didn't. The fact was that in 1918, most countries were still not allowed to talk about what was going on very much, the effects of the war. And Spain, who hadn't joined the war, they still had freedom of the press, so they were able to report what was going on in their country with a lot of people with flu. Anyway, this fellow that's, in fact he's a New Zealander, but he's been working in the United States most of his life. He's the absolute world expert on flu, particularly avian, and it's these feathered friends of ours, ducks in particular, but ducks and chickens, where the main problem comes from. And he asked the question, what would you do in the case of a killer outbreak? And evidently it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You know, that outbreak in 1918 saw about 500 million people affected, and it killed somewhat between 3 and 6% of the world's population. In some cases, an awful lot more. In Samoa, for example, closer to home here, about 22% of the population died after a ship from New Zealand, it was the Toluno, it docked and offloaded sick passengers. That sort of thing wouldn't happen again. You have to get permission to land anybody that's sick, or in fact land anyone that's dead. So those sorts of things wouldn't happen anymore with the border controls that we've got. The borders would just close up. In that 1918 one, 8,500 New Zealanders died, which was actually half the number that were killed in World War I. So you can see how devastating a pandemic is. And they reckon now that it would only take 2 days for something that got established in one part of the world. It would take 2 days before it covered the world as a result of air travel. So if you hear about anything on the air, you're in a nicely isolated part of the world, you should stay away from live poultry, particularly ducks and also chickens, and especially in the live markets. That's evidently where they do all their major studies. You wouldn't be allowed to leave the country. In fact, you probably couldn't leave the country. I can remember, I don't know how many years ago, David and I were in Chameleon and waiting. I think we'd come into Auckland to check out. We'd been in Tauranga, and my beloved cousin arrived back on a plane from either Mexico, Los Angeles, I think. But on that plane were a whole pile of kids who got sick, and they thought it was the pig. What did they call it? The pig. Well, I called it the pig flu. Anyway, they had this major outbreak in Mexico, and these kids had been to Disney World, and so they isolated them off the plane. Well, beloved Sharon, she came and visited us and passed on to me, because I'm pretty susceptible to these things, a flu. So it came on really, really quickly and quite disastrously. So I wandered up to I called the doctor not far from West Haven Marina, where we'd gone in, and I was met with him with his face mask and everything on. They took samples and had to send them to Australia. So we were not allowed to leave the country until that sample had been checked and hopefully was going to be clear. In fact, it was, of this particular nasty bug. But everything shuts down in cases of these pandemics, so you have to be really, really careful. But you are in a great spot out there. Probably it would take longer than 2 days to reach you. I think if I was in the islands, I'd head somewhere that didn't have an airport, somewhere down maybe in one of the Lao Islands or somewhere in the Hawaiis, although there's an airport there now, isn't there?
But anyway, who would eat the chickens? Remember, we were in Vanuatu, and we were given a chicken, and you couldn't cut that chicken with a chainsaw. It must have been, it was a marathon chicken, I'm sure, maybe a cousin to the Roadrunner. But no matter how you cooked it, you couldn't eat it. Literally, it was unbelievable. So we're safe in the islands from chicken. We just don't want it.
It was pretty tough. I even tried one of them in the pressure cooker, and it was still pretty tough, and it didn't have any meat on it. Talking about marathon runners, maybe the chickens were Kenyan, because a Kenyan has just won the marathon in Berlin in 2 hours. It's a world record. It broke a record of about 19 years ago. 2 hours, 1 minute and 39 seconds. Can you believe it? Mr. Kipchoge. Anyway, the first three runners winning the race were in fact Kenyans, as was the women's race winner. But boy, that 2 hour is getting closer and closer. Absolutely stunning. Okay, well, let's get on to more cheerful news. That might be 100 years that there is a recognition of the flu, but anyway, it's 125 years since women got the vote in New Zealand, first in the world. So we've had a lot of stories about the various women who have made names for themselves over the years. So 125 women's suffrage. So there you go. What else is there? There's not an awful lot. I'll tell you what, Queenstown has been deluged with snow. The poor South Island have got a tremendous amount of snow. Here's us with our 16 degrees up here, and they have 45 centimetres of snow. Of course, they're all ecstatic because it means that the winter season keeps going, but boy, it's pretty nippy down there. Not much to talk about from America. There is quite a lot of publicity going on about this fellow Beto O'Rourke. It's not his name, but he's been called Beto for many, many years. He's the nominee for the Democrats in the U.S. Senate race in Texas. He is competing against Ted Cruz, but he's getting an awful lot of internet time, and he sounds quite good. I've listened to a couple of them, and he's I think he's in the 45. Yes, I did write that down. He's 45, grew up in El Paso, and he's certainly getting an awful lot of press. So we'll be interested to watch him as the months go by for that Senate race.
They all sound good.
Well, they all sound good, I know, until they get somewhere. Yeah. Well, Scott Dixon, our man in America, he has won his 5th IndyCar race. Absolutely unbelievable. 5th IndyCar championship title for the season. This is at David's old stamping ground, actually, Sonoma Raceway. It's a great track there. So Chip Ganassi Racing will be pleased they have signed him up for another few years. He's done incredibly well there. Just seems to just keep on winning. I was going to talk about something else, but I see our time is getting by here. Is there anybody with anything from Full Golf Harbour?
They're all entranced.
Oh, they're all entranced. I don't know with what. Maybe they're thinking what they would do with a pandemic. They'd wonder. Actually, we would have been fine with a pandemic. When we sold our first boat Runaway, we had as much food on there. It could have lasted us another year out there somewhere. But and I'm sure many of you who have got captains like I had would be pretty much the same. There's an awful lot of stuff to take off the boat when you decide to sell it and buy another one. So we'll see what happens. But we certainly could have gone on quite a few more months with the food we had on board, and I presume that fish don't get avian flu, so that would have been all right. All right, I am going to just. What was that? Oh, seagull. Yeah, you better not eat seagulls and those stupid boobies that come after your lures. I am going to talk now just very, very briefly, because we've had a couple of questions, for people that don't have the radio and want to know how to communicate on Passage. Well, you can actually send a email if you've got a sat phone. That would be all right, so we know where you are. But if you're going in the normal Passage time, then we would be certainly talking about that. And if you go with a buddy boat, hopefully they would hear you. But those people do have ability to get grids, and I just wanted to draw your attention to our website, ghradio.co.nz. In addition to all of the papers on weather, there's a section called Radio and Communications, and in that section there are various papers of interest. One is called Maritime Radio and Weather Contacts, and it's just a one-pager, and it's got all of the telephone numbers and the websites that you could possibly want relating to passaging in the South Pacific. So you might want to just look at that one and copy it, because it is quite useful. There is another one called GRIBs, how to order them and view them. Now, it is quite important to get the most out of your GRIBs, to format them and get the colours right and everything right. So have a look at that paper, and you'll probably find you'll get more out of the GRIBs. I wrote it, and Serge on Sperari had a good go at it as well. He's pretty good at that. So just have a look at that paper. It is of interest. There's also one which you won't probably want to bother with until you get more time: radio installations and operations. Some of you have grim installations and operations, so it would be really nice if you got stuck into that one, probably when you get back to New Zealand or Australia. And then there's various other ones, the RNZAF Orion, and they're going to be replacing those Orions in the not too distant future. But there's a paper there written by an Orion captain as to how best to operate when they're looking for you. So have a cruise through that one as well. The other ones are on the ham radio license, how to get that, and there will be another exam in April of next year in Whangarei for anybody that's interested. That means that you can communicate with folk in Australia and New Zealand on Tony's Maritime Net, which is in about an hour and a half's time. So anyway, just have a look at that one, that section in the website on radio and communications, because it's got some stuff there that would be of interest to you. So we're almost now at the 1:30 time when David does his morning update, and that's good. I'll just have a quick look here. Port Dinner Hour, thanks Margie. Levecchio, yes, we hope they get in soon too, but they're doing pretty well. I'll just give you Levecchio's position. 3446 south. They're ahead of time, only 24 miles to go, and they will make it. 17423. Actually, they'll get a free wash on the way in. 100% cloud cover. No rain so far, but I suspect it's going to happen in the next couple of hours looking at the satellite picture. They're on a course of 199 true in anticipation for these easterly winds which have arrived already. East 17 to 20 out there, so it's a bit stronger than what we've got here. And their bar is 1014.6, so they're certainly closer to the system than we are, which is scooting across the top 1018 here. But they're very lucky. I suppose David's going to talk about that weather, is he? I don't know. Anyway, that's where Lavecchio are, and so I haven't heard from Midnight Sun. I presume they're in because they were head of the fleet, and I suspect Peter on Rapaki, I think that they will be in too by now, or if not very close up there at Raukua. All right, here's David.
Righto, good morning everybody. And speaking of papers and all that kind of thing that are on the site, we've been getting a couple of emails in the last week about routers. A lot of you are interested in using a router to get to New Zealand. And, well, we've got the obvious, of course, with McDavitt here in New Zealand. And then there's others. A few of you are using routers that are in the Atlantic area. That's all well and good, but really you should think about, if you are going to use a router, use one that has experience in the Southwest Pacific. It is different down here, and unless you have really had experience, things happen that they may not be aware of, and you're literally just wasting your money. And the other thing I'll mention is that one of the purposes of this net is to teach you enough weather to do your own forecasting and your own passage planning. And we've got a few papers on how to get to New Zealand that are there if you want to read them. But if you pay attention to the weather enough in advance and look for trends, study your grids, there's no reason why you can't do this yourself. You don't really need to hold hands with someone. And if you do decide to hold hands with someone, you really have to do it frequently because the models change virtually every day. There's going to be differences, and unless they're having you or giving you information on a regular basis, that's a waste of time as well. So the money just keeps building up if you're going to do this. Now, we here will be very happy to look at your passage plan if you do establish one and give comments on it. And if you have a working radio, then of course we'll be giving you weather as the migration period starts and go from there. So anyway, enough of that. Maybe I'll do a session on sailing to New Zealand in the next couple of weeks. Okay, well, we again start with the usual 500 millibar report. And to the east, our ridge is still present and accounted for. And over New Zealand, our shortwave trough has really developed. It's a beauty, actually. It's left-leaning, and it's quite hungry to gobble up that surface air. And to accommodate this, we've got a very juicy subtropical depression that's north of Cape Reinga, and we have a second depression that's just off of the South Island. And it's that second one that's caused all of the snow and cold air for that part of New Zealand. So not very pleasant down there. But the one that's to the north is just sort of lingering. We expected it to travel south a little bit quicker than it has, and it doesn't look like it's going to be as powerful as what we thought originally. Anyway, west of all of this action is a 500 millibar ridge, and that's supporting and maintaining a high that's in the mid-Tasman right now. Now, the subtropical depression that I just talked about by lunch looks like it's going to be located near 33 and 175 east, 33, 175 east. Now, the North Island currently is dealing with a prefrontal trough, and that's going to be followed by a front this afternoon, a little bit later today. Now, those yachts closing on New Zealand are going to have to deal with this. Most of them are here, having beat this, which is very good. None of them can hear us due to the distance regarding the radio, but they did a pretty good job in establishing an ETA and sticking with it. I would have preferred they got in a day sooner, but anyway, that's cruising. Now, this depression with the aid of that 500 shortwave, is sending a frontal band north, and that's somewhat of a curve, and that extends to Vanuatu. Now, this is a cold front. Now, in addition to that, there is a warm front that's preceding the cold front, again from this subtropical depression, and that's bothering Tonga. Now, the cold front is probably going to swing around to affect Fiji either later today or tomorrow, possibly into Thursday. So it's hard to predict that. They sometimes just slow down, other times they speed up, and they go a little bit quicker than we think. And looking ahead, the next depression to affect New Zealand looks to be Friday into Saturday, roughly that time frame. And on Saturday, the next high is going to be centered near Brisbane. And it looks like a central pressure of 1030. So it's a pretty substantial high. And this one tracks south-southeast. So that by Monday, which is, I believe, the 24th, it looks like it may be east of Tasmania. Now, projections call for the high to be quite broad, meaning large in area. And its ridge looks to be east, to have gone east, or will go east, to about 175 west. So this is on Monday. So it's pretty big. And you ask, is this a new window? And I'll just say maybe. There is a possibility that those of you that want to get going, this could be another window for you. But we're going to have to follow this to see what happens. Again, when these highs get to 1030 and higher, we always have a worry on the northwest corner where we tend to get a depression forming or a trough or some evil thing like that, and that messes up the arrival weather. So anyway, we'll track this and let you know if it looks reasonable. Okay, moving to the islands and starting with Tonga. The trough there, really an extension of the New Zealand warm front, lies just to the west of the group. You can see it pretty clearly on satellite imagery, but cloud and showers are already reaching the islands. And there's breaks as well, you can see that. So expect mostly cloudy with scattered showers there. Tonga Met still has a strong wind warning in force for Vavau, Hapais, and Tongatapu, with northeast winds 20 to 25 and gusts to 30 and maybe more. And with that will come rough seas, of course, and if it's rain, you'll have poor visibility as well. I've got some tides for you. Low tide at 8:25 this morning and a high at 2:45 this afternoon. And finally, the airport reports this morning. They're about 6 a.m. roughly. Vavau was east 15, barometer 1014. The Hapais reported east 17, the barometer 1015, and Tongatapu had gusts up to 22 knots out of the east, the barometer 1016. Over to Fiji, doesn't look bad at all on satellite imagery, save for some scattered cloud. Now that New Zealand cold front lies just to the west of Fiji. You can see it. And prefrontal cloud is racing toward the country. So expect the front to arrive, I don't know, it could be later today, certainly into tomorrow. Now, a strong wind warning is still in effect from Fiji Met for Kendavu Passage, the Koro Sea, which is a rather broad area, and the southern Lao. That's east to northeast winds, 20 to 25 knots. And the rest of Fiji, east to northeast, about 15 to 20. Later and into tomorrow, I'm seeing northeast winds. I would say mostly for the Lao and the Koro Sea area. Easterlies up around the Rambi area, Taveuni, Rambi up there. And looks like southeast for Kendavu and the western bits of Fiji. And of course, if you're in wind shadow areas, the wind's almost non-existent and certainly different from what I just gave you due to the orographics. Okay, on to Vanuatu, where our cold front is having its way with the group. So expect cloud and showers as this system goes through, heading for Fiji. Winds mostly south-southeast to southeast. By lunch today, fairly light from Port Vila northward, about 10 to 15 knots. And Port Vila and to the south, the winds are a little bit stronger, up to about 20 knots. Tomorrow, still southeasterlies, 15 to 20, up and down the chain. And the sea height in open water estimated to be about 1.5 meters. And considering, that we have a frontal band, the winds are fairly mellow. Gusts, of course, are the exception. You get fairly large cumulus congestus, or CB. You're going to get gusts to 30, 35, maybe even 40 knots, but only briefly. But for the most part, not much wind in this. Over to Newcastle now, where things did deteriorate yesterday. Satellite imagery this morning, though, shows the heavy band itself just over northern Grande Terre, just right on the shoreline, and certainly affects the loyalties. They're getting hammered at the moment. But Ile de Pan and the Southern Lagoon looks great. So expect southerlies there, about 10 to 15 knots, just partly cloudy. The winds will tend southeast later tonight, around 15 knots. Tomorrow, still southeast and partly cloudy, and there's always a chance of a shower, particularly in the afternoon. And the next front to arrive in good old New Caledonia may be Friday. So enjoy the next couple of days in that Southern Lagoon, if you can. And that's all I've got. Any questions or comments from now? And here's the chief.
And I forgot to give you the report from Flying Fish, which comes from the Hapais, 18 knots of northeast and sunshine, which evidently is a pleasant change after 10 days. I didn't realize it had 10 days of gloomy, damp, blustery weather up there. Thank you, Jeffrey. Enjoy the Hapais. Anybody with anything? Oh, sorry, I had the microphone, the volume down too much for you. Try again. Oh, welcome back, Jonathan. You've had your time in civilization. Where are you? Okay, let's have a look at the west of Fiji now, from the Denarau to the Yasawas area. I think Taranui will be interested in this as well. So,
Today or tomorrow?
What day? Today or tomorrow, Jonathan? Oh, okay, tomorrow, the next day, and looking at whether this front will be an event. Well, I hope the forecast he gives you in a minute is better than the one I got yesterday, which gave me all of 5 minutes with my clothes on the line. It was like a Chinese laundry inside my house yesterday. Sheets don't exactly do well inside, trying to dry. Here he is.
Now, wait a minute. Okay, here's the deal, folks. Got this little rotary thing that we hang clothes on our porch. And so Patricia is out there wrestling with some sheets. She really likes to wash sheets. I mean, to me, once a year is fine, but now got to do it every week. So she's pegging these sheets up there in the wind. They're flapping around, and I'm looking to the north, which is where the weather was coming from, and I point out, dear, take a look at that. It's raining about a quarter mile to the north. She hangs it up. We go back inside. 5 minutes later, it's pouring. Out we run, get soaked. Clothes are already wet, so that didn't matter. And so we had a fireplace. Here it is, 18 degrees. We like the fire. And so the clothes are dry. All right, Jonathan, sorry about that. The front does not look like much. I like your expression. Will it be an event? I don't think so. There will be wind shifts, needless to say, northeast followed by southeast, but not going to be too bad at all. Looking at the Yasawas for, well, let's look at Wednesday. We'll give you a Wednesday at lunch. And it looks like it's sort of a mix of winds. In the main, east to east-northeast, but it's quite possible it could be southeast. It just depends on where the axis of that trough is. Further to the east, it's all northeast winds. But right there in the Osawas, you'll be on the west side of the axis on Wednesday at lunch. But light air, other than the gusts that we talk about. But in the mean, the wind's going to be fairly light. And that's Wednesday at lunch. And then looking more towards dinner time, it'll swing around to the southeast for the Osawas, and the axis will start moving east. The axis will probably be in the Koro Sea, affecting maybe Vanua-Levu, but there in the Osawas, not too bad. Now, it's not to say it won't be cloudy and showers, but wind-wise, not much. Be quite a bit of a wind shadow from Viti-Levu as well, particularly if the wind is from the southeast. So hopefully that's correct. Over.
All right, I'm just sitting here reading. Some of you got some wonderful websites. I'm looking at the Flying Fish website at the moment. They're really good reads. Anybody else with anything? All right, haven't heard too much from anybody this morning. Might be having a lazy day, seeing as it's not all that great. We will be back again tomorrow morning. Same time, same place, and in the meantime, we'll leave you to enjoy your day. The frequency is now all yours. Those that are ham radio people, I will be net controller today in an hour and 10 minutes on 14315 upper sideband. So if you've got nothing to do, we can chat to you then. Cheers, everybody.